Mr. Butterfield, are you aware of the installation of any listening devices?
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Stolen FBI records which have been made public.
Politics in the 1970s were marked by scandal and intrigue, with several high-profile controversies shaking the foundations of trust in public officials. As the Watergate scandal dominated headlines, many other significant but lesser-known political scandals flew under the radar. Join us as we explore the 8 worst political scandals in the 1970s you forgot about.
Great movement goes in the same direction forever. Nations change, they adapt, or they slowly die.
The Watergate scandal, which took place between 1972 and 1974, is a significant event in American political history. On June the 17th of 1972, a group of burglars was caught breaking into the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C. These individuals were connected to President Richard Nixon's re-election campaign. They had been wiretapping phones and stealing documents from the DNC offices. At first, there was no clear connection to Nixon, but suspicions grew when investigators discovered that the burglars had a White House phone number among their belongings. Nixon's administration took extensive measures to conceal the crime. After the initial wiretaps failed, the burglars returned to the Watergate building to set up a new microphone. The Washington Post reporters Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein played a crucial role in exposing the scandal. Their investigation, based on tips from an anonymous informant known as Deep Throat, uncovered Nixon's involvement in the cover-up. The discovery that Nixon was directly involved in trying to hide the truth created a constitutional crisis. The situation escalated when secret recordings of the Oval Office, known as the Nixon tapes, were released. These tapes showed Nixon's direct participation in the cover-up. Facing imminent impeachment, Nixon resigned from office on August the 9th of 1974, becoming the first U.S. president to do so.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
The scandal had a profound impact on the American public. It eroded trust in political leaders and raised serious questions about the integrity and accountability of the presidency. The widespread outage and demand for transparency pushed the truth to the surface, leading to increased skepticism and a more critical view of political power. The main figures, including Richard Nixon, the 37th President of the United States, saw his legacy tarnished by Watergate. After his resignation, he withdrew from public life, writing books and giving interviews, but remaining a controversial figure until his death in 1994. Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein continue to have successful careers in journalism. Their work on Watergate was groundbreaking and earned them a Pulitzer Prize. The book, All the President's Men, further solidified their place in history. The informant known as Deep Throat, who was later identified as W. Mark Felt, the FBI Associate Director, revealed his identity in 2005 and passed away in 2008. As we've seen, the Watergate scandal shook the foundations of American politics, leading to a crisis of trust. But how did another major leak, the Pentagon Papers, further challenge the government's credibility? Let's explore the impact of these crucial documents and their role in shaping public opinion.
The New York Times printed the Pentagon Papers. Exactly 40 years later, the complete file was released today.
The Pentagon Papers, made public in 1971, were a major revelation that seriously damaged the U.S. government's credibility during the Vietnam War. These documents, officially known as the Report of the Office of the Secretary of Defense Vietnam Task Force, were leaked by Daniel Ellsberg, a former military analyst to the New York Times. The papers cover the years from 1945 to 1968 and showed that multiple administrations had been deceiving the public about U.S. involvement in Vietnam for decades. The Pentagon Papers revealed that the U.S. government had been systematically misleading not just the public, but also Congress and itself about the Vietnam War. They uncovered secret operations, hidden bombings, and the real extent of military engagement in Southeast Asia. The documents exposed a significant gap between the government's public statements and the harsh realities faced on the ground. When the New York Times published excerpts from these documents, it led to a legal battle. The Nixon administration tried to block further publication by obtaining a restraining order, arguing it was necessary for national security. Despite this, the public's demand for truth was strong, and other newspapers, like the Washington Post, continued to print the Pentagon Papers. As a result, public opinion turned strongly against the Vietnam War as people became aware of the extensive government deceit. The legal struggle over the Pentagon Papers reached the Supreme Court in the case of New York Times Co. versus the United States. This landmark decision supported the First Amendment right to a free press, ruling that the government could not prevent the publication of the papers. This ruling was crucial in reinforcing the importance of press freedom and transparency. Daniel Ellsberg, the whistleblower who risked his career and freedom to bring these documents to light, became a prominent anti-war activist and continued to advocate for government transparency. The New York Times, the newspaper that first published the papers, remains a respected institution known for its investigative journalism. The Supreme Court justices who ruled on the case left a lasting legacy, influencing future decisions related to free speech and the role of the press.
It was a rather routine FBI undercover investigation of a stolen property fencing ring. But what was routine for the FBI soon became extraordinary.
The Abscam Sting operation, which took place from 1978 to 1980, is a fascinating episode in American political history. This undercover operation was led by the Federal Bureau of Investigation with the aim of uncovering political corruption. The operation was masterminded by Melvin Weinberg, a convicted swindler who became an informant for the FBI. Weinberg set up a fake company named Abdul Enterprises and posed as an Arab sheik with a fortune to invest. This elaborate ruse was designed to lure politicians into accepting bribes. Undercover FBI agents, pretending to be wealthy Arab businessmen, approached various politicians with offers of bribes. The goal was to catch these officials accepting money in exchange for favors, and the agents recorded these interactions on video. The targets of the operation included several members of the U.S. House of Representatives, one senator, and various state and local officials. The use of video recordings was a bold move, providing clear and undeniable evidence of the corruption taking place. The public reaction to the Abscam scandal was one of shock and dismay. Many people were outraged to learn that politicians were accepting bribes. There was considerable debate over whether the FBI's tactics amounted to entrapment, but the legal proceedings resulted in the convictions of several individuals. The case highlighted the ongoing tension between law enforcement methods and principles of justice. Melvin Weinberg, who played a crucial role in the operation, continued to be involved in the world of undercover work and occasionally advised on similar operations after his time with the FBI. The politicians who were convicted faced various consequences, with some serving prison sentences and others fading from the public eye. As we wrap up our look at the Abscam Sting operation and its impact on American politics, what other secrets did the FBI have hidden away? Let's explore the shocking revelations behind the COINTELPRO next.
The FBI is reported preparing to shut down some of the 500 small agencies it maintains around the country because of security reasons.
In 1971, a group called the Citizens Commission to Investigate the FBI made headlines by uncovering the FBI's illegal activities through a daring break-in. On March the 8th of that year, 8 brave activists managed to infiltrate a small FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania. Their mission was to gather concrete evidence showing that the FBI was actively working against social movements and suppressing dissent within the country. They succeeded in taking every file that they could find, putting their own freedom at risk to reveal the truth. The documents they recovered exposed the existence of COINTELPRO, which stands for Counterintelligence Program. This secret FBI operation was designed to target and disrupt civil rights groups, anti-war activists, and other political organizations deemed subversive.
Recent events have given more indication of the extent of government snooping on civilians. Stolen FBI records, which have been made public.
The program employed illegal tactics such as surveillance without proper authorization, infiltrating groups to create internal conflicts, and spreading false information to discredit and divide activists. In some cases, COINTELPRO even went as far as inciting violence to undermine these movements. Once they had the documents, the activists sent them to journalists at the Washington Post. The newspaper's reporting brought the FBI's action into the public eye, sparking widespread outrage as people learned about the government's abuse of power and violations of civil liberties. The revelations led to a significant public outcry and increased scrutiny of the FBI's activities. The main figures in this story were the anonymous members of the Citizens Commission who took a huge risk to expose COINTELPRO. Their bravery played a crucial role in revealing the extent of the FBI's overreach. The activists targeted by COINTELPRO, including civil rights leaders and anti-war advocates, continued their efforts in activism despite the attempts to discredit them. Their ongoing work helped to keep the issues of justice and civil rights in the spotlight. The scandal also led to the first congressional investigation into U.S. intelligence agencies, marking a pivotal moment in American history. The members of the Citizens Commission remained anonymous for decades, but eventually revealed their identities in the documentary 1971. Meanwhile, many of the COINTELPRO targets continued their advocacy for justice and civil rights, and the FBI's actions became a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked government power. As the COINTELPRO revelations rocked the nation and exposed deep governmental overreach, another scandal was brewing, revealing a troubling exchange between corporate interest and political power. How did corporate giants manipulate government decisions? Let's explore the ITT scandal next to uncover the full story.
Generally speaking, I don't believe that the death penalty accomplishes an overriding social purpose.
The ITT scandal of 1972 is a notable chapter in U.S. political history involving a mix of corporate interest, government influence, and public outrage. In the early 70s, the International Telephone and Telegraph Corporation, ITT, became the center of controversy. The scandal revolved around claims that the U.S. Department of Justice had settled 3 major antitrust lawsuits against ITT in exchange for a substantial campaign contribution. The story broke on February the 29th of 1972 thanks to syndicated columnist Jack Anderson. He revealed that the DOJ had agreed to settle these lawsuits against ITT in return for a $400,000 donation to help fund the 1972 Republican National Convention, which was to be held in San Diego. This arrangement suggested that the Nixon administration had used its influence to benefit ITT financially in a very questionable way. The scandal was further fueled by what became known as the Dita Beard Memo. Dita Beard, an ITT lobbyist, had written a memo on June the 25th of 1971 which admitted to the exchange of favors between ITT and the government. The memo implied that ITT's financial support was directly connected to the favorable outcome of the antitrust cases against it. The public was stunned by this apparent mix of corporate interest and political dealings, which led to widespread anger and skepticism about the integrity of the Nixon administration and the DOJ. Several key figures were involved in the scandal. Richard Kleindienst, who was the Attorney General at the time, faced intense scrutiny during his confirmation hearings for a Senate position in 1972. He denied any pressure from the White House to drop the antitrust actions against ITT. His predecessor, John Mitchell, was indirectly linked to the scandal since he had been Attorney General before Kleindienst. Ed Reineke, the Lieutenant Governor of California, was convicted for lying under oath during Senate hearings about his discussions with Mitchell. However, his conviction was later overturned due to procedural issues. The outcomes of the scandal were significant. Kleindienst ultimately pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor, receiving a 1-month prison sentence, which was later suspended, and a fine of $100.
Well, I was very humbled and very flattered by it. It was an emotional experience.
Additionally, San Diego lost the opportunity to host the Republican National Convention, which affected the city's prestige. As for the individuals involved, Richard Kleindienst continued his legal career but remained under scrutiny due to the scandal. John Mitchell was later implicated in the Watergate scandal and served prison time. Ed Reineke continued his political career in California but was tainted by the scandal's implications.
We've had another burst of revelations and charges concerning the Korean intelligence and lobbying scandal.
In 1976, the Koreagate scandal unfolded like a gripping political thriller, revealing a network of bribery, influence peddling, and secret deals. The central figure in this scandal was Tong Sun Park, a wealthy South Korean businessman who acted as a go-between for the Korean Central Intelligence Agency and United States congressman.
Key operative, perhaps the most important unofficial link between the Korean government and the United States, was Washington businessman Tong Sun Park.
Park's role was crucial as he facilitated the flow of money, gifts, and favors to influential American lawmakers. Over 115 members of Congress were allegedly involved, accepting bribes from Park. These congressmen were motivated by various factors, including financial gain and political maneuvering. Park's mission was to sway American politics in favor of South Korea. To achieve this, he used a complex scheme involving the distribution of commissions from American rice sales to South Korea. The money from these commissions was used to secure favorable decisions for South Korean Congress. When the scandal was exposed, it sparked widespread public outrage. People were shocked to learn that elected officials were accepting bribes. In response, the U.S. House of Representatives formed the Subcommittee on Internal Organizations to investigate the matter. The investigation revealed that former KCIA Director Kim Jong-uk and members of the Unification Church testified about Park's involvement. The scandal had several layers of complexity. South Korean leaders were particularly upset about Jimmy Carter's campaign promise to withdraw U.S. troops from South Korea. They needed support to ensure that American military presence continued in their country. Additionally, South Korea was seeking approval for military modernization assistance, further complicating the political landscape.
Louisiana politicians received national attention this week when Tong Sun Park testified in Washington in the Korean influence buying scandal.
The legal repercussions were significant. 2 congressmen faced charges. Representative Richard T. Hanna of California pleaded guilty and served 1 year in prison, while Representative Otto Passman of Louisiana was acquitted after trial. 3 other congressmen received formal reprimands from the House of Representatives. Tong Sun Park, however, fled the U.S. and remained in South Korea, where he was denied immunity.
I made such a payment.
It could have been Hong Kong or it could have been a few days later in Korea, is that right?
Richard T. Hanna's political career suffered greatly due to the scandal, but he eventually returned to private life. Sun Myung Moon, the founder of the Unification Movement, was speculated to be involved, but faced no direct legal consequences. The Koreagate scandal had a lasting impact on U.S. politics. It led to reforms in lobbying laws and increased scrutiny of foreign influence in American politics. The scandal remains a cautionary tale about the complex relationship between national interest and personal gain. As the Koreagate scandal revealed shocking levels of corruption and foreign influence in U.S. politics, you might be wondering about another political scandal that rocked the nation. How did a tragic accident on Chappaquiddick Island expose a dark side of American politics? Let's explore the details and uncover the impact of the Chappaquiddick incident next.
There is no truth whatever, to the widely circulated suspicions of immoral conduct that have been leveled at my behavior.
In July of 1969, a tragic event occurred on Chappaquiddick Island, Massachusetts, involving Senator Ted Kennedy. After leaving a party late one night, Kennedy drove off a narrow bridge, causing his car to overturn and sink into Poucha Pond. Inside the car was his 28-year-old passenger, Mary Jo Kopechne, who tragically drowned because she was trapped inside the submerged vehicle and suffocated.
Senator Edward M. Kennedy drove a car off a narrow bridge and into a pond on Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. A young woman in the car with him was drowned.
Kennedy had planned to take Kopechne to a nearby ferry landing and then return to Edgartown. However, he mistakenly turned onto a dirt road that led to the bridge where the accident happened. Although Kennedy was able to escape the car and swim to safety, he failed to rescue Kopechne. Her death occurred between 11:30 p.m. on Friday night and 1 a.m. on Saturday morning. Instead of reporting the accident immediately, Kennedy left the scene and did not contact the police until after 10 a.m. the following day. This delay in reporting shocked the public and led to widespread criticism of Kennedy's actions and character. People wondered why he did not seek help sooner and why there was such a long delay in notifying authorities. The controversy stirred national outrage and speculation.
We will just present our facts, and then if the complaint is issued, then a summons will be issued for the senator, and then we have to go to court.
In a court hearing on July the 25th of 1969, Kennedy pleaded guilty to leaving the scene of an accident and received a 2-month suspended jail sentence. In a televised statement, he admitted that his actions were indefensible and made no sense. An inquest held in January of 1970 revealed that Kennedy and Kopechne had not planned to take the ferry as initially thought. Instead, Kennedy took a dangerous turn towards the bridge and drove too fast in the dark conditions. Although the judge acknowledged Kennedy's negligence, he did not recommend further charges. Ted Kennedy, the youngest brother of President John F. Kennedy and Senator Robert F. Kennedy, saw his political career overshadowed by this scandal. Despite the controversy, he continued to serve in the Senate until his death in 2009. Mary Jo Kopechne, a dedicated political staffer, lost her life in this tragic accident, and her name became forever linked with the scandal. The Chappaquiddick incident had a lasting impact on the Kennedy family's reputation, highlighting the gap between their public image and private actions. Ted Kennedy went on to advocate for health care and civil rights, leaving behind a complex legacy that blends significant achievements with the ongoing controversy.
We were able to get the very best in terms of health care because we were able to afford it.
The Chappaquiddick incident's aftermath left many questioning the integrity of those in power. How did such scandals shape the public's view of political responsibility? Let's dive into another significant scandal that exposed deep flaws within the system: the House banking scandal.
The deficit is the responsibility of the U.S. Congress. They spend the money.
The House banking scandal, also known as Rubbergate, began in 1972 and came back into the spotlight in the early 90s. This scandal revolved around the banking system of the House of Representatives. Back in the 70s, the House Bank allowed Congress members to overdraw their accounts without facing penalties. In essence, they could write checks that would not bounce because the bank provided overdraft protection. This system meant that members of Congress were able to spend more than they had in their accounts without consequences. When this information surfaced in the 90s, it sparked outrage among the public. People were angered to learn that elected officials enjoyed special privileges that ordinary citizens did not. The scandal revealed a lack of financial responsibility and transparency within Congress, damaging the public's trust in their government.
You write a check for $10 and you've got zero in the bank. They're the same at one level. At another level, obviously, the way this information is going to come out.
Over 450 members of Congress were linked to the scandal, though most did not break any laws. However, 22 representatives were criticized by the House Ethics Committee for allowing their accounts to remain overdrawn for long periods, drawing significant scrutiny and disapproval for their financial practices. The House Bank itself faced criticism for enabling these overdrafts. Even though the checks did not bounce, the lack of penalties for overdrawing accounts drew public criticism and led to dissatisfaction with the system.
Because you can't go cash a check for money you don't have at a bank means that people aren't going to run for Congress to be elected.
The scandal also echoed earlier controversies like the Sharpstown scandal in Texas. Gus Mutcher Jr., who was implicated in both scandals, faced indictment by the Securities and Exchange Commission in late 1971. Mutcher was convicted of conspiracy for accepting a bribe from Houston banker Frank Sharp. He resigned from his political position but later appealed the charges successfully. Mutcher continued to work as a consultant and lobbyist until his death in 2023. Frank Sharp, who was involved in the Sharpstown scandal, was also implicated in the House banking scandal. He was found guilty of breaking federal banking and securities laws and received probation and a fine. Another key figure, State Representative Tommy Shannon, was convicted of taking a bribe from Sharp and also received probation.